Okay, good evening. I'm Phil Oschlager. I am the chairman of the Greenville Pitt County Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome and thank you for attending tonight's Education Summit. I'd first like to recognize a few dignitaries in attendance tonight. This is always the precarious part of the presentation. Jill Chemnitz is here. She's from the Board of Education. Jill, thanks for being here. Mark Richard, who's the chairman of the Board of Education. Thanks, Mark. Dr. Ethan Lenker, sorry, Superintendent of Pitt County Schools. Ethan, thanks for being here. Barbara Owens from the Board of Education. Barbara, thank you. Sean Kenny. Where's Sean? Thanks you, Sean. Candy Smith, Greenville City Council. Hey, Candy. Scott Elliott from Pitt County Manager. Really would like to thank you all for being here tonight and taking time out of your day to be here. If there's any other dignitaries in attendance this evening, if you would please kind of... Oh, Benji, I'm sorry. Benji Forrest, Board of Education, I'm sorry. Didn't even write that down, but I did see out there. So thank you for being here. I really want to thank the Board of Education for really making a very strong showing here tonight. It's very important to us, and we appreciate you being here. This is our 8th Educational Summit, and we're extremely excited to have partnered with Parents for Public Schools of Pitt County to help put this year's summit together, which is geared toward parents and how they can become positive and constructive participants in their children's education and in their children's school. As you'll find out in a moment, PSS of Pitt County is a great resource for our parents and a first-class organization. I also want to thank Dr. Lenker and his staff for their assistance with organizing tonight's event. The Chamber appreciates the partnership we have with Pitt County Schools as we work together to build a stronger educational foundation for our children and for our community. As you might know, the Chamber's mission is to build the strongest business climate in Eastern North Carolina. But to successfully do that, we must build a strong school environment if we are to achieve our full potential in both Greenville and in Pitt County. Now I'd like to take a minute to introduce and thank our sponsors for tonight's event, for which this could not be going on. First, our presenting sponsor, United Way, City Hotel and Bistro, Miller Mott College are our gold sponsors. Our bronze sponsors are Greenville Utilities Commission, Mount Olive College, and State Farm, Chris Godley. If we could give these folks a round of applause, I'd greatly appreciate it. Like I said, without their support, tonight's event would not be possible. So it's now my privilege to turn it over to Jim Ciesler, the Executive Director of the United Way of Pitt County, and our presenting sponsor for tonight. Jim?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to just thank the Chamber for taking the leadership in putting on these education summits. This is the second year that the United Way is the lead sponsor, and we fully intend to make that kind of a permanent piece of our focus on school success, sponsoring this event. So we're proud to be sponsors of this event. You know, the United Way's goal is to create lasting change by addressing underlying causes of community issues. Now, we still provide a set of basic needs services, a safety net, if you will, of basic needs services. But we also look at the bigger picture, and we're trying to tackle the single issue of strengthening family structure in Pitt County. We're doing that by focusing on two things: school success and workforce development. And the bottom line, I'm not a PhD doctor or whatever, but the bottom line is we all succeed when a child succeeds in school and when there's jobs for working families. And that's our focus, and that's the direction the United Way is doing. And that is why we're so proud to be so very heavily involved with the Parents for Public Schools. The impact that this program is going to have on Pitt County is going to be immense, and we are glad to help out however we can, and also to be the sponsor for tonight. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the person who's going to introduce our speaker, our key speaker, our lead speaker for tonight, someone who is starting to become doesn't need an introduction anymore, starting to become a familiar face, someone who, for the school board members in attendance, you made a very good choice. You made an excellent decision. Dr. Lenker.
Good evening. Ann Foster returned to her native Mississippi in 2009 to become Executive Director of Parents for Public Schools. A graduate of Mississippi University for Women, she and her husband are parents of 2 sons who attended public schools in Richardson Independent School District in Texas. Ann served as a 3-term elected school board member for Richardson Independent School District and served 7 years as president of the board. She was the first executive director of Raise Your Hand Texas, graduated from Leadership Texas and Leadership Texas Association of School Boards, and received the Outstanding Communicator Award by the National School Public Relations Association. Formerly a realtor, Ann founded Realtors Supporting Public Schools in Richardson and served as a commentator on public education for KERA Public Radio in Dallas. Ann loves the mission of Parents for Public Schools and believes that parents have a place at the table when it comes to public schools. Please welcome Ann Foster.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your attendance at an event like this tonight. I want to tell you first that several of us have spent the day touring your schools. We have 2 other staff members from Parents for Public Schools National. Beside myself, I'd like to introduce them, Jane Beach and Joanne Mickens, if you'll wave or stand or something. We had the pleasure of spending the day touring your schools, and you know, the thing I kept thinking the whole day was, where are the 75% of people who don't have kids in public schools? Why are they not here with us seeing the incredible things these schools are doing? You would be so proud, and if you are someone who hasn't been through your schools lately, you should arrange the tour with Parents for Public Schools that we got today. We visited Ridgewood Elementary, Belvoir Elementary, J.H. Rose High School, C.M. Epps Middle School, and G.R. Whitfield School. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we saw in those schools. I was humbled and just inspired by what I saw taking place in Pitt County Public Schools. We saw orderly students where discipline was obviously well managed. They were learning to manage their own time. I saw lots of amazing opportunities that they were having. I saw programs for kids with special needs like ESL and EC and autism. We actually went to a music class and sang Let It Snow with the kids. They wanted us to sing by ourselves, but we turned that down. We saw theater students doing set designs. We saw, and this was funny, we saw 6th grade band students. Now, how many of you ever had kids to do band? Because I did, and I can tell you that in 6th grade it's not pretty. But you know what it's the beginning of, and so it was a wonderful sound to hear that. We saw multiple uses of technology, and I just want to congratulate Mark and the school board for whatever you've done to get technology out there, because it was being used in multiple ways. Instructionally, when we checked into the school, for communications with parents, just amazing uses of technology. Kids were walking up and down the halls recycling. 6th graders were studying Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And it was truly a 21st century set of schools that we saw. And so we were thrilled with those school visits and really thankful for the opportunity to see what's going on here. One of the things that I truly believe about public education is that if you want to have quality public schools, you have to have every part of the community supporting those schools. And if there's nothing else you hear tonight, that's probably the most important thing. That includes, of course, your teachers and your staff, your administrators, the students themselves, parents, the 75% of citizens who don't have kids in school, churches, civic groups, nonprofits, the business community, and realtors. And those folks have to support and improve public schools if it's going to happen. Now, I know that you guys want to go forward in Pitt County and be even better, And, you know, I don't have any grandkids yet, but I have some friends who have a little granddaughter named Eva, and she was one of those kids not doing well in first grade, not sitting down, not doing her work. And they had an intervention with Eva and said, Eva, if you don't change your behavior and get better, you're going to have to go back to kindergarten. And Eva's face lighted up, her eyes started shining, and she said, when can I go? And so, you know, we're not trying to go backwards like Eva. You want to go forward. And so having a Parents for Public Schools chapter in Pitt County is something that we're very excited about for you. Our entire organization, including our other chapters around the country, are thrilled to have the chapter. We've enjoyed getting to know the parents who have started the chapter. And what we really appreciate is that they have gone about this in a very strategic and thoughtful way. And we believe they've started the chapter for all the right reasons. They took the time to gain a lot of input from fellow parents and from community folks. And they've partnered with two cornerstone organizations in your community, the United Way and the Chamber of Commerce. And I just really want to thank those two organizations for their strong interest in the quality of your public schools. That is so exciting, and it's not always what you find. I know both of these organizations have already made significant volunteer commitments in schools, and now I feel working with Parents for Public Schools, this is going to be a great thing. I want you to know just a little bit about PPS. PPS started in 1989. It started in Jackson, Mississippi, with a group of parents who wanted to go into a school district that many other people had left. A lot of community interest had left. There had not been a bond passed there in over 20 years. There were a lot of crumbling buildings, and these parents felt that if all parents could come together to support their kids' education, that progress could be made. Well, others around the country heard about this fledgling organization, and they wanted that in their community. And so PPS became national in 1991. And today we have about 19 chapters in 13 states, and we have our own branded parent engagement program called PPS-Pitt. Our mission is to strengthen and support public schools by engaging, mobilizing, and educating parents. We're governed by a national board that is made up of half of the members are actually from our chapters, and the other half are public education advocates. PPS principles haven't changed at all in 23 years. We believe that public education is a community enterprise. We believe that it's the foundation of our democracy, it's the basis of a free people. It's well worth the effort that it takes to preserve it for our kids, our communities, our states, and our nation. We have chapters in urban areas, we have chapters in mid-sized districts, and we have some smaller districts. And we see that many of the same issues come out of all those places, maybe with some different viewpoints, but each chapter finds value in being part of a national network and getting ideas from other parents and receiving support from a national organization. Our non-negotiable stand is that we oppose the use of taxpayer money for private school tuition, and that will not change by virtue of our board's position. So while there are many organizations in the last 5 years that have popped up because of issues, parents who don't like too much testing, parents who like charter schools, parents who don't like charter schools, PPS didn't form over an issue that we just wanted to resolve that and leave. We really formed because we know that we always have to work on our public schools, and we intended to do that for the long haul. Now, some of my own experiences with public schools mirror some of the schools and issues that you have in Pitt County. Some of the schools today reminded me of my kids' schools in Texas. My husband John and I have 2 sons, and is there anybody out there who ever tried to teach sons how to wash dishes? Because I made a stab at that, and there's something that happens still in our family now, and my sons are in their 30s. I'll go into a kitchen if they're there eating, and it looks like somebody's done the dishes, and then I look in the sink, and there is always a terrible pan soaking in the sink. You know, it's the worst pan, and it's just got soap in it. Well, our public schools are sometimes like that. We can't leave the pan soaking because who's going to come and clean the pan? Well, we know the mom does maybe, but we can't leave it to somebody else because it is up to those of you sitting here tonight to have the best possible public schools in Pitt County. I realized this in Richardson, Texas a number of years ago because I was in a school district that had some rapidly changing demographics. We had lots more kids living below the poverty line, and we actually had over 100 native languages spoken. And what I knew as a parent was that my kids were getting a really incredible public education. And then I would go out on the streets and I would hear people talk about the schools, and it was like two parallel universes. And I began to realize that some of the culprits were realtors, that they actually didn't understand what was going on in our schools. And all that to say, I decided to run for the school board, and I won a seat on the school board. And as soon as I got there, I decided that we needed a group for realtors. We needed to invite realtors into our schools on a regular basis so that they knew what was going on and they could give the right information to their buyers and sellers. And I'm really excited that that organization is still going strong after a decade, and that hundreds of realtors have participated. We even got them little riders for their for sale signs that said, "I support Richardson schools." And I would love to see that on for sale signs in Pitt County, knowing that a realtor is going to be able to give the right information and be supportive of public education. And maybe because I was a realtor, but realtors make their living from the community, don't they? And so is there anyone who should be in a position to support the public's interest in their public schools anymore? All businesses should, and realtors have a special place in that. Well, as a school board member, it was a privilege for me to serve because my school district had been exceptional for many years. It had been nationally recognized, but a lot of people had decided to write it off. And that really upset me because of the teachers, the administrators, all of the people who were doing such amazing jobs. And we had a school board that believed that we could again gain prominence, and it became the highest performing large district in the state of Texas with an extremely challenged student population. I know that that kind of thing is possible here too. I saw your kids today. They're kids who can learn and they can achieve, and every single one of them can. Every school can. And when you look at schools that are beginning to really achieve high results with kids that are challenging because they do live in poverty or they don't speak English when they come, then we know that it's possible, don't we? And we know that there really are no excuses. Well, at the end of 9 years, you can imagine I had some pretty strong opinions about school board service, and I enjoyed talking with several of your school board members here tonight. I can't really talk about public schools and parents without talking about school boards, because I think parents need a relationship with school boards. They need to understand the role of school board members and help them do their job in the best way possible. The public entrusts school boards with so much, and boards should never let that trust be broken. I learned that when you have a school board, you have a number of individuals with multiple sets of ideas and expectations. But I also learned that if schools are going to succeed, those individuals have to come together with one strong vision for all students and for the community schools. Some people revel in split votes on school boards. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard somebody brag about that? Split votes are not good, in my opinion, and they don't serve a school district well. When you're trying to create policy that teachers and administrators are going to follow, they need a united school board. And if the policy in front of them is not something that the school board can support, you can work to get to that point where you can support it. You can make changes and make compromises and discuss things, and then you come together in a strong way to support the policy that you're asking your schools to follow. Truly, school boards represent the public, who, after all, cannot all crowd into the school board meeting and make every decision. I learned that school board members need to listen to the concerns of the community and to return every single phone call and email to parents, citizens, taxpayers, whoever might call and have an interest in their schools. But most of all, I learned that school boards represent the hopes and dreams of a community. They represent the people's hopes and dreams for their kids and for their future. And it's the school board's job to work with professional educators to make those dreams come true. I think school boards are really a bridge between the community and schools. And the school board members here tonight would probably understand what I mean by that. You have one foot in each world, but you're really not of each world. You're sort of in the middle. And one really crucial role of school board members is that they are the face of public education in your community. They and the superintendent are the face. And so I want to really say to any parents here tonight that you should be at your school board meetings. They are conducting the business of your children's education with your money. Now, don't you think you should be there to hear about that? That's an important thing, and I hope that that is happening and will continue to happen in Pitt County. But what about parents in public schools? What role do parents really have? Well, we have a little thing we like to use in PPS that you might get a kick out of, and it has to do with the number of parents you're dealing with. We like to say that one parent is a fruitcake. Two parents are a fruitcake and a friend. Three parents are troublemakers. 5 parents are let's have a meeting. 10 parents are we might should listen. 25 parents are our dear friends. And 50 parents are a powerful organization. Well, PPS has been working with parents for 23 years, and there's some things that we know for sure about parents. First of all, we know that of all the people who have a stake in public schools, parents have the shortest window of time for schools to be good, don't they? Because they only get to educate their kids one time. And if they miss what they need in 3rd grade, it's going to be hard from that point on. So they have the shortest window of time. We believe that parents should be at the table when decisions are made that impact their children. And we believe that when school districts execute those decisions with parent support, it will go so much better and always go more smoothly. We know that when parents have the information and skills that they need, they can be the best advocates in the community for public schools. Now, being on a school board, I know that parents can sometimes do inappropriate things. Let's just admit that. Some parents can sometimes. Maybe not in Pitt County, but where I was, they could sometimes do things that were a little off base. But that's okay because you can work with them and help them understand the process. But schools could not pay for the PR that a happy parent produces. Because if a parent feels that their child is getting a great education, what are they going to do? They're going to be out in the community. They're going to be at the grocery store saying, do you know what happened over there at my school? Here's what's going on. It's really incredible what advocates parents can be. And I'd like to talk a little bit about 2 words tonight. We talked a little bit about this today during our tours. We hear a lot today nationally about parent involvement. And we also hear about parent engagement. And so maybe you've never thought about the difference between those two. We like to use parent engagement a lot because involvement seems like a more passive word. Parents might come if the school calls. Parents might do something if they're asked to do it. And really, that's okay for a lot of parents because we know that parents live on a spectrum and they're not all at the same place, but they're all capable of moving up the spectrum if someone invests in them. And so parents who start out being involved may become more proactive later and really take ownership of their schools and really understand that if their schools are to be good, then it's up to them to help them become the schools they want to see. So I hope you'll think about that. I hope you'll work in Pitt County to move parents along the spectrum from involvement, which is good, to engagement, which is even better. We also know that parent engagement impacts student achievement. And I don't know if any of you have ever read any research by Karen Mapp and Ann Henderson. They either have or are currently on our national board, and they have written a book called Beyond the Bake Sale. They've done a lot of research about parent engagement. And there's a lot of research that shows that parent engagement impacts student achievement. Better grades, higher test scores, stronger attendance, higher graduation rates. And I want to be clear that PPS does not advocate that parents try to run the schools, but rather that they be authentically engaged with schools, working in partnership with educators. sometimes PPS can be a critical friend to a school district because there might be something the school district is doing that a large number of parents don't agree with. And even though not all parents can have their way all the time, we think that our opinions and our honest assessment of how schools are doing should be a very valuable commodity to a superintendent and a school board and a community. So we know that schools are seeking continuous improvement, and we think parents can help make that happen. I believe that parents are ready to make an impact here in Pitt County Schools because there are so many positive things going on here to build on. I was on your website a few days ago and I saw, Dr. Linker, that you have a site for parents to go about Common Core, and I think that's great because even CNN this week said that Common Core state standards won't work unless parents understand and get on the bandwagon. I know that your board sought public input before you were hired. I know that they asked the community, what kind of superintendent do you want? What traits do you want that person to have? And I think that's great. I know that Dr. Linker himself came and immediately began a listening tour and meet-greet sessions with parents and other stakeholders, and I read the article about that, and I think that spoke volumes to the community. So I sense that there's been some really strong support going on in many Pitt County schools, maybe all Pitt County schools. But I think that the pieces are in place now for something even greater to happen, that the entire community could begin working in concert, the parents, the stakeholders, the citizens and businesses and nonprofit sector, to support your public schools in a more comprehensive way together. And I hope to see the business community continue to take a real hand in this because that is really so critical. I've always thought that businesses and schools should be partners. There's so many assets for both. Businesses, of course, can encourage their employees to support public education in many ways, whether that's through mentoring or tutoring. But schools are not businesses. They really can't be run like businesses exactly, but they can learn from businesses. And businesses have the need to give input to schools because their future employees are sitting there each day. And schools should understand what's important. What does a business want their employee to know when they come out of high school? Who are the people they want to hire? What traits should they have? And to just not communicate about it is a huge loss. So I'm glad that businesses here are involved. I hope more and more will be, and that support will be comprehensive, that it will be intentional, and that it will be sustainable. So I really do hope that Pitt County will see stronger, even stronger perceptions of their public schools in the community. I really do think it's a huge challenge in America today that 75% of Americans don't have kids in school. They may have grandkids in school, but that well may not be in the school down the street. And so they don't have contact with our schools. And yet we still need them to pay taxes so that the parents of today can educate their kids just like those parents got to do decades ago or recently. So that's something that I think PPS of Pitt County can work on, to take the message out to the public of what's really going on and maybe to bring some of those folks into the schools. That would be the best of all. If there's some families that have left your public schools, I hope you'll see them come back. And I hope that, if not yet, that there will be a time when people say, we're moving to Pitt County for the schools, because that's the highest compliment that I think a school or a community or a school district can get. I hope you all truly work to create a community for public education where everybody recognizes that they have a stake in public schools and that they work to lift them up, not to tear them down. We all know that there are efforts in place to tear down public schools. There are just some people and some groups, and some of them are pretty well funded, who would like to dismantle the public education system. They just don't believe in it. And I hope that Pitt County will be known for lifting up public schools. And I hope that this will be a place where every person cares about every school in the district and every child in every school, because anything less will not produce the schools that you want and need. You all have over 23,000 students, I believe. And when your educators go home every day, you can be sure that they've done a full day's work and then some. I hope that you find new and better ways to support your school district employees, your teachers. I met some great principals and teachers today, and I read about some others on your website. But because teachers are under fire in our country in so many ways, I hope that PPS of Pitt County and the community will take this on as one of the things that they want to see happen here. I'd love to see the Chamber of Commerce and the United Way get involved in this, and I've shared some ideas with both of those groups and their leaders already. But one way or the other, let your teachers know you appreciate them and welcome them when they come here as new teachers. Welcome them in such a way that they'll want to stay and build their lives here with you. And finally, I hope that as you support and improve your public schools, that you'll begin to see more and more of the assets that come with strong public schools, that you'll see your economy become stronger, you'll have better job prospects here for kids when they graduate, you'll have a new emphasis on arts in your community, and we saw some great art today in your schools. You'll have engaged citizens who go and vote, and you'll just have an overall better quality of life in Pitt County. I want to close with what John Dewey said a long time ago, but it's one of my favorite quotes. It says, "What the wisest and best parent wants for his child, that should the community want for every child." So I want you to know that Parents for Public Schools, our national organization, will be working with your local chapter. We will be cheering you guys on and very interested in how you're doing, keeping up with your new superintendent and your school board and the new chapter of Parents for Public Schools of Pitt County. Thank you again for being here tonight. Thank you for being interested in your public schools.
Thank you, Ann, for those great words. Good evening, everyone. We're going to begin our question and answer portion of the night. I'm Annie Fuller with Parents for Public Schools, and I'll be tonight's moderator. At this time, I would like to ask our panel to step forward and take your seats. We have collected questions throughout registration, and tonight our panel will be answering those questions that were submitted. And I would like to introduce our panel of experts. You just heard Ann Foster with Parents for Public Schools, the national chapter, Dr. Ethan Linker with Pitt County Schools, John Dornan with North Carolina Public School Forum, Mark Wichard with the Pitt County School Board, and Chris Godley with State Farm. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you all for being here. First, we're going to start with comments from each of our experts. You've heard from Ann, but we'll allow her some additional comments if she chooses.
Well, I think I'd rather hear more comments from the rest of this illustrious panel. I think you guys heard enough about me already, but again, I'll just say I'm so glad to be in Pitt County.
All right, Dr. Linker.
I am also excited to be here. I've had about 25 or so years in education. The last 9, I've been a superintendent in a couple of different school districts here in eastern North Carolina. Spent a lot of time in the town of Greenville over the last 7 or 8 years getting my doctorate degree, so this is kind of like coming full circle for me, so I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
John Dornan.
Well, it's also good to be here. I was with a group called the Public School Forum for 25 years and retired a couple of years ago, but over that time we did training of school administrators in Pitt County. We worked with your local Ed Foundation. We worked with your original PPS chapter, and it's good to be back again. But I think the thing that's really exciting to me is you've always had a strong community when it comes to your public schools. The turnout tonight, I think, is indicative of that, and the people I met that are starting this new chapter of PP&S certainly have some energy and commitment to it, and I really wish you well, and hopefully could even give you some help if I could. But I'm excited to be here, and it's good to see another chapter start.
Mark.
I'm Mark Witchard. I'm a 16-year veteran educator. Spent a great deal of time working in elementary, middle, and high schools in Pitt and Edgecombe counties. I currently am a high school principal in Edgecombe County, native of Pitt County, and so just very pleased to be here tonight for this important forum.
Chris.
Hello, I'm Chris Gottlieb. I'm the owner of one of the State Farm agencies here in Greenville. I'm very proud and honored to be here as well amongst such a stellar group. I've been in the insurance business now for almost 17 years, and I'm a proud small business owner and looking forward to giving information as well as learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel, I'm going to ask the questions, and whoever feels compelled to chime in, feel free. The first question is, what resources are available to help parents support their child's learning?
I'll start. One of the things we miss in our public schools, or we don't take advantage of, is our school counselors. I mean, that's their job, is to help with the kids and to help moderate and get parents involved with who they need to get help with, whether it's academic help or just social help. We really need to take advantage of those counselors, and that'd be the first place I would start. When I'm having trouble, if I was having trouble with my daughter, I would start with a counselor, because they have connections to everybody in the school. I just think that's a good place to start.
Well, I think building on what Dr. Linker has said, it's important to stay in contact with your child's classroom teacher, the individual teacher. We oftentimes see in important events at our school, athletic stadiums and so forth, full when they're supporting the kids on the playing field, but I think it's so much more important, not taking anything away from athletics, but so much more important to be supportive of what's going on in the classroom, because that's ultimately what's going to build our communities. I think we've seen through very recent issues in our state in terms of the changing economy, how important it is for our schools to change and reflect those changes in terms of what's going on within our state, and be able to make those transitions to benefit our communities here in Pitt County.
How can a parent best communicate with their child's teacher?
Again, I'll start if that's all right. We have lots of ways. I mean, of course, now with technology, you can do all sorts of things. But, you know, in our K-8 schools, we've got these little handbooks these kids have. And just real quick, you can write a little note to a teacher, and teachers usually look at them and check them off almost daily. So that's just an easy way, real quick, to see what homework your kid had. You can say, well, what does this really mean? The teacher will see that the next day, can respond back. You know, email is almost obsolete for our kids these days, but us grown-ups, we're still using email, and you know, we're a little behind. I haven't figured out Twitter yet, but I'm trying to figure that out. But my kids have figured it out. I'm not sure I like that either, but that's the one way, just to be able to communicate in just written form. You know, call the counselor again and set a meeting up and go sit with the teacher. It's amazing how much stuff we can solve if you just go sit down and have a conversation. And then the other thing is really just support that teacher. I think that's the next question. Sorry about that, but really it's, you know, just support that teacher and what they're trying to do, and you can see that you'll see your kid grow.
You know, I want to tag on to that. This climate for teachers is really about as bad as I've seen it in North Carolina after working with schools for 30 years now. Something that parents can do that both gets to the communication issue, but I think it also gets to an important issue, and that is letting teachers know that parents care about schools, they want to be partners. Nothing more complicated than meeting the teacher and saying, if I ever can be of help with the problem with my kid, please don't hesitate to call. I'd like to be your helper. And let them know that you're there, let them know that you care. I think that's incredibly important this year, because of the morale issues, the lack of pay raises for 5 years and whatnot, is to let them know you're there with them, and that can make a difference. We've got a lot of teachers looking at other states, all of which are paying more than we are right now. Every state abutting North Carolina is paying substantially more, and we're going to start seeing more of an erosion. And it comes to the community. If people feel like they're in a community that cares, they want to be a part of it, they tend to stay.
So how can the business community assist with getting parents involved with Parents for Public Schools in Pitt County?
I'll chime in on that. One thing we do at State Farm is we have a couple different programs in place catering towards our drivers who've been driving, had their license for 15 months or less. And one of those programs is called the Street Safe program. And with that program, State Farm, we allocate dollars towards sponsorship to have a highway patrol person come in, and they will set up a driver's course to help young drivers learn how to drive safely. We also partner with parents. Part of that program is a child cannot participate in that program unless the parents are there as well. Along with that, it teaches education with parents, because the number one cause of death amongst teenagers is actually car accidents. And we realize that, and there's nothing more tragic than a parent losing a child, especially in a sudden accident. And so we try to do things to try to help reduce that by teaching them how to drive safely, how not to text and drive. We show them some videos that are very powerful videos and real true life stories to help children realize the importance of driving safe, making sure they're buckled, and just everyday safe driving practices and habits.
We've seen some really creative things done in some of our work on the Mississippi Gulf Coast with some companies from the shipbuilding industry who actually arrange for their employees to take certain time off to go for parent-teacher conferences. And I think businesses can encourage that kind of thing, maybe even a volunteer day at their child's school once a month or something like that. They have that ability.
That'd be great. So how can a parent get involved in their child's actual school building or the school district in general?
Oliver, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just saying, and I won't speak Pitt County, I just want to say that we think that whenever a parent comes to the school, the visit should include a focus on student achievement, because that helps parents understand what their kids are learning, how they can help with it, what they're expected to learn. And so, that's important.
All of our schools have parent-teacher associations or parent-teacher organizations, or even just booster programs for academics, this is the first place I've been that actually I've seen an academic boosters. And that was, I think I was named on a Monday, and Tuesday got an email from the Rose Academic Boosters with some incredible things that was going on at Rose High School. So it was just I was like getting kind of excited and seeing some of the neat things. But getting out and seeing those things, I think the tour you saw today is maybe something we need to plan a little bit more of. We need to do some more things like that for parents so they can see different schools. And that gets you involved a little bit more in the district and see what's going on in different places. Because not every school does exactly the same thing every day. So it's just a way to see what's going on in the different schools.
I'll throw one other thing out, particularly for a chapter PPS. There's an educational role to be played. Parents, for instance, is Common Core standards. What did the test scores that came out about a week ago mean? Are we going to hell in a handbasket, or is it that the standards are much higher and it's just a predictable drop? But running programs and giving parents information about things like Common Core and other aspects of education can be a really viable role for an organization like PPS.
Well, I think each one of the speakers has touched on this a little bit before, but parent education is so important in terms of parents understanding what roles and avenues that they can participate in the schools, that doors that can be open to them for participation. Title I requires it in their budget in terms of parent education programs and classes, but I think all of our schools, and Pitt does a phenomenal job of doing this, but certainly we'd like to see this in every area throughout North Carolina, but parent education is the key for parents to understand what roles they can play in the schools and how they can help their children at home. Classroom learning doesn't just start and stop at the schoolhouse steps. There has to be an integral part at home with the parents being involved, participating. One of the things I talk about a lot, and I see some faces that I know have heard me talk about this before, but there are 4 very important quarters of education. I think 25% has to be with a quality administrator that's dedicated in each school building that understands what it takes to have a successful school. Another 25% is on a dedicated and quality teacher in that classroom. That's a full half of the equation. The other half of that equation comes from a parent that's at home that cares and is understanding of what it takes to help educate their child, and that other quarter is the student themselves in terms of taking ownership and responsibility for what they need to do in school and participating and being responsible, being respectful in the school building itself. So, and if any one of those things falls out of sync, you have a system that's not as successful as what it could be. I think when you look around Pitt County and you look around other districts in our state, some of the most successful programs, the key to it are the parents being involved. And I think you had spoken earlier tonight, that engagement piece. Being involved is not enough. Being engaged and being informed is key and critical to your child's success.
Very good. Why do you feel that the public school system is important to economic development in Pitt County? Chris?
Well, I myself am a product of the public school system, and I'm a firm believer in the public school system. My daughter is in public school. She's in the first grade. She's very excited about that, as am I. But my wife and I, we're both very much involved with her principal, her teacher. We make sure we're there for every conference. But not only that, we make sure that her teacher understands and realizes that we are there to partner with them in the promotion of our daughter and the growth of our daughter. And we want to make sure that, like I said, she knows that we're there to partner with them, that we're there not there to beat them up, we're not there to be against them, but we're there to work together as a team to help promote our daughter's education.
Very good.
You know, we several of us in the hall were talking about how Greenville has changed over the last 20 years. And when you think about your workforce at the moment, you are really going to have an increasingly high need for skilled, educated workers as your dentistry school grows, et cetera, et cetera. But just look around at the buildings that weren't here 10 or 15 years ago. Education's critical. If you're going to be a town that's known for high skills, for medical, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the workforce in the public schools, the community college, and ECU are more important than they ever have been in your history.
And touching back on what you mentioned earlier, John, a hot topic in North Carolina at the moment is teacher compensation. Public schools in North Carolina will always educate the bulk of our children. How do we come together as parents, business, and community leaders across party lines and put forward a plan that compensates teachers in a way that shows the value of their contributions to our children and our future workforce?
That's $1 million question, isn't it?
I'll say what not to do, and that is to only give a very small handful of people bonus pay because their kids are scoring higher on tests. You have employees out there who in 5 years have had 1.5% salary increase. They are not going to pay for advanced degrees any longer. The General Assembly, that's a 10% potential loss in pay. This issue of compensation is no longer an abstraction. We're back down to 48th, I believe it is, in the country, and there's no good news in sight. Something to consider locally is if you want to make an investment, could there be some local funding of salary increases? But it really is an issue. The one thing research is clear on, and I don't care whether we're talking about schools in Singapore or talking about schools in Pitt County, the most important element to whether a kid's going to get a good education is the quality of the classroom teacher. And if we can't keep a quality teaching workforce, our hopes for being a world leader, much less a national leader in education, are a pipe dream.
You know, we're losing 50% of our teachers in the first couple of years they teach.
Wow.
And then now we're hearing we want to give, as John said, we're going to give bonuses to teachers whose test scores look good. You know, but one of the things that we've been trying to do in education, not just Pitt County, but across the state, is getting teachers to sit down together and work as a group. Mm-hmm. And that's just so powerful And you need that teacher to become the school leader. And now the first thing we're trying to do is, well, if your test scores are good, we'll give you some money. And if yours aren't, well, but we want these teachers to sit down and work together to help all the kids. Some of the things I've done in the past was we would take every kid and reorganize them so they weren't. It's not like you went to this teacher all day. You were with every teacher in the third grade. And how are you going to measure that? And that's the question that you try to share with members who are or General Assembly members who are deciding where we're going. So you're trying to paint that big picture, but that's where I think John's exactly right. If we're giving it to just a few teachers because of a test score, we're going to put schools way behind.
And I think Dr. Linker and John Dornan touched on this as being very, very, very important. As a school administrator, I see teachers that are first year, second year, year 5 teachers essentially all making the same thing. And they're doing jobs in the evening, working part-time jobs, trying to make ends meet, and they're coming to school the next day totally exhausted from working on lesson plans, grading student assessments, working that second job, trying to support their family. There's even a story out of the western part of the state in terms of a teacher that had to go on public assistance in terms of not being able to provide for her family. And these are individuals that have been to 4-year colleges or universities that are well-trained, highly trained and skilled educators and still cannot make ends meet for their family, doing a tremendous service to our communities. And I think in North Carolina we have to get back to valuing public education. It is the foundation, as it has been demonstrated here in Pitt County. It is the foundation for any community success. I was in a meeting today with something our district is starting in terms of a partnership, apprenticeships, where our students are working with business and industry in Nash and Edgecombe counties, Consolidated Diesel, Carolina System Technologies. They're forming partnerships for our students to have jobs, and they've adopted classrooms. Business and industry, the relationship, and we're thankful for the wonderful relationship we have with our chamber and with the business community here in Pitt County. That is so key. I think people look at that sometimes as a nice little plus or a little gold star that you can put on the top. But that really is the foundation in terms of those relationships that you can build and support, creating jobs for students when they can graduate from our high schools and stay in our communities and give back. That's a difficult sell, particularly in rural and eastern North Carolina, when so many of our kids, you hear them, I hear it now, when kids are walking across my stage graduating. I can't wait to get out of eastern North Carolina. We'd better hope these kids stay in eastern North Carolina and return something to this community, or eastern North Carolina is going to become a thing of the past. No matter how much we try to brand and sell our communities, if our public schools aren't performing and we don't have people that are vested and tied to this relationship, it's going to all crumble and fall apart. But we're on the right path, and I really believe here in Pitt County we've got a very successful model and recipe that I think other districts could replicate.
I think that Mark is absolutely right when he says that we have to begin to value public education again, and I think there's so many things that are legislative based, and I think there's a bigger picture here also that we have to talk about. I know in Texas there have been a lot of the same issues and cuts and those kinds of things, and more school board members are running for the legislature because they feel that the message has to be taken to the State House that public schools are important. And not only that, there's a very successful parent PAC in Texas that works to elect both Republicans and Democrats to the legislature who are friendly to public schools. It's nonpartisan or bipartisan, and they have had some really good success with some people and unelecting some others.
Well, writing off of what you just mentioned, Ann, can you share a couple of additional examples from chapters across the country where they have had complex, maybe even divisive education issues to confront, and how those PPS chapters were able to effectively assist a school district in reaching a solution?
Yes, we have some great examples of that. Our chapter in San Francisco helps parents navigate the attendance system in the San Francisco Unified School District. They have complete choice, and parents don't have any idea what to do sometimes. And our chapter there helps parents with that and actually makes that school choice program work for the district, I think, in that way. They also go to school board meetings when difficult policies are being considered, and they translate the school board's discussion into multiple languages. They then take that to the living rooms and community centers of the different ethnic communities in San Francisco. They tell parents what the school board is considering doing, ask them how it will impact them and whether they could support that, and then they translate it back to English and take it back to the school board. So that's a tremendous service. We also have a chapter in Starkville, Mississippi that has done exactly what this question asks. And it's a city and a county school district that the legislature in Mississippi has pretty much decided will be consolidated next year. And the chapter in Starkville has stepped up to take leadership on that and say, you know, we all live in this county together. We all care that every child gets a quality education, and we're going to lead the charge on this to make sure that these schools are the best they can be for every child. And that has been a tremendous asset to that whole discussion, which otherwise would have been much more divisive. In Cincinnati, we have a chapter that worked with a union dispute, just simply in keeping both sides at the table and reminding both the school district and the union that it was their kids who were at stake, and so therefore they should sit there and keep talking until something good happened. And then the last one I'll mention, we have the state of Hawaii now. It's one school district for all the islands, and their state board of education is their school board. And Hawaii loses families from public schools at the middle school level, and the PPS chapter there has begun to reach out to parents and just bring them into middle schools and take them on tours and talk about the successes of those schools and why they are happy that their children are there. And I think they're helping the district turn that around. So, you know, I hope that this will come up with some great stories here about what the chapter here, because I said that earlier, is that parents can help make policy work when the school district works with them and they understand what's going on and everybody can get on the same page.
Yeah. Thank you. Dr. Linker, other districts in the state have parent advisory committees to the superintendent. Do you envision incorporating parents in the PCS decision-making process?
Yes. The last school system I was at, we actually had advisory councils in each of our districts. They had their own little hierarchy, and they had you know, their own organizations, you know, 4 or 5 members, and we would meet in those. I would go meet in those groups at least once per year in each of those groups, and then we'd have the chair of each group come sit down with me at the end of each school year to talk about what we need to be working on, what things we need to do differently. But I also think there's, you know, something else, you know, here is you know, all school boards have the, you know, 10 minutes at the beginning of a meeting for anyone to come and speak, whatever. But and those meetings are, and those times are usually, you know, they speak and that's it. It's done and gone. There's no real communication back and forth. And that'd be a time, I think, where for me to set up a time maybe before each school board meeting for parents who have that kind of a question and actually could get real responses to come and sit with me. And that's something we're going to get organized here very soon. So parents could come and just say, what about this? You know, rather than say it at a school board meeting and then not getting an answer until, you know, a day or two later when I get back with them.
Sounds awesome. All right. This is a 2-part question, but I'm going to make it one. What do you think about, panel, vouchers or charter schools? Or both?
I think one of the things I would say, I don't disagree with the concept. I think public schools, I think it's been good to have a competitive sort of atmosphere in terms of having to compete. I think that has really increased public schools' accountability. I think that's good, anytime that you have increased accountability. What I disagree with is that the playing field is not level. The same rules are not applied to charter schools, and that's by state statute. And I think people, if you take a look at the recent sets of performance indicators that have come out from the state, a school in Kinston was recently closed. I think their performance composite was around 11%. A charter school that had been in place for a long time consumed a lot of state taxpayers' money with very little oversight and accountability. Another school in another county nearby had a charter school that was performing at the same rate as the traditional public schools were. And so when you look at the amount of money that's been taken out of the public schools to support another separate system, I think the problem I have with that is when our public schools are having to have bake sales, if you will, and I'm speaking metaphorically, to purchase textbooks and technology, and we can't afford to give our teachers pay increases, we can't afford to build buildings, we can't afford to eradicate mold from our school buildings, we can't afford to fix leaking roofs, we can't afford to replace school buses that catch fire. We've got a real problem when we're having this paradigm shift in North Carolina where we're now creating, I think, to go back to some old terminology, a separate and very unequal system. And I'm very much so concerned about that when you look at the racial makeup of some of these schools. Some of the charter schools that I've recently seen have white composites as high as 98%, and some of the other charter schools go in the opposite direction as high as 98%. And so that is very concerning. I think a public school, my children go to public school, they always will. I'm a product of Pitt County Public Schools, and I'm very proud of that. I think it's very important for children to be exposed to all races, all walks of life. And I think when people are given vouchers or they're given an opportunity to participate in the charter, we need to make sure they're there in existence for the right reasons. And I'm very concerned at this breakneck speed that North Carolina seems to be moving and going to an opposite direction when teachers don't have to be fully licensed in these buildings. They don't have to adhere to the same standards. And yet we're crippling with the shackles. And you can probably tell this is a little bit a passionate topic.
I'm glad you took this one.
But you can tell that our teachers in North Carolina, you know, I have a teacher that's performing in my building at a very top high level, exceeds expected growth, to use state terminology. And yet, if she doesn't pass a praxis score very soon, she's going to be turned out, and I know where she's going to go to work. It's going to be a charter because they don't require them to have those same standards. Why? In North Carolina, we're tearing apart a system that North Carolina was known, and I don't want to make this political, but during the Jim Hunt years, our state was looked at across many other states as one of the most effective school systems that other states, Texas, Virginia, they were all visiting our schools. No one's visiting North Carolina, and that's a problem. That's a real problem.
You know, the one thing that I think it really is necessary to separate the charter and voucher issue because charters are part of the public school systems. The organization I was with actually helped write the original bill, and our hope was that it would stimulate innovation that would be replicated in the public schools. Unfortunately, there's a Hertz and Avis mentality, so never the twain shall meet. And unfortunately, if you look at charters' performance, they are exactly like public schools: good, bad, ugly. They're not. They're a handful that are as good as any public school in the state. The majority of them are so-so. But one thing that I think is really important: charters, again, are part of the public system. It was intended to give choice. That is very different than what the General Assembly enacted last year, which is voucher legislation, focused, if you're not familiar with it, parents of at-risk young people, low income typically, are eligible for vouchers for about $4,200 a year. Now, that is over $1,000 less than what the General Assembly state money goes towards students in public schools, and it's over $3,000 less when you add local, state, and federal dollars. So if you are a low-income parent with an at-risk child, you will get essentially a voucher worth over $3,000 less than what the public schools spend, $1,000 less than what the General Assembly spends. But here's the hooker, and Mark talked about it. The private schools are responsible for administering some kind of test, a national test. They have to send the scores of students with vouchers in, but they are not for public record. They can't be released. They will not be monitored. So, excuse me if I sound a little over the hill on this one, but as a member of the General Assembly, I have just saved $1,000 of state money for every kid who doesn't takes a voucher and leaves the public schools. But more importantly low-income, at-risk kids are most likely to have the lowest test scores. I have just gotten them off the books. They are out of sight, out of mind. I think it is one of the most cynical pieces of legislation I've ever seen passed in North Carolina. And I really weep for the quality of education most of these kids are going to get for $4,000. Our top private schools in the state right now, Cary Academy, Ravenscroft, Charlotte Latin Day, these are really elite private schools. Their tuition's running over $19,000. Out of sight, out of mind.
Those schools don't have to take those kids.
That's right.
That's the other part.
That's
I'm going to take them all.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to put every single one of them in class, and we're going to teach them, and we're going to graduate them. At least that's our goal. The other schools don't have to take those kids, even if they bring the money. I agree with everything Mark said. I'm glad you said it, though.
Well, I told you earlier that Parents for Public Schools has an official board stand against vouchers. I personally think that vouchers are an experiment that taxpayers can't afford, and every time they elect people who dupe them with the idea that this is the way to improve education in America, it just saddens me a lot because it doesn't work and it takes resources away from the schools that over 90% of our kids attend. And those schools, as we've said, are already enduring cuts. And so when you look at it, it doesn't make a bit of sense. And, you know, I personally think that people should not, if they believe in public schools, they should let elected officials who vote for that know that they will not be voting for them again, because that's the only way that changes. As far as charter schools, PPS does not have a stand on charter schools. We have board members who have charter schools that they value in their districts, and some are not as fond of them. When I was a school board member, we had a few charter schools. John, you're absolutely right. The innovation did not transfer from charters to regular public schools. That was the promise of charters, and that promise was broken. I guess the thing that bothers me about charter schools is that the people who promote them do so in a way that makes it sound to the public like this is the only hope for America's failing schools, and that if we can't get all charter schools and just keep adding more charter schools, that we won't solve our issues. But the reality is that only about 4% of kids in America attend charter schools, so we're completely dismissing the other 96% when we focus solely on charter schools. I personally have seen some that were failures in terms of finances and also academics, and then I've seen some that were good, but I don't think that it's the wave of the future for American education. I think that we have to bolster all of our public schools, and if we are able to offer some choice in the form of charter schools within public school districts, in addition to magnet schools and neighborhood schools, then I think that that's fine.
How can parents work with schools to provide teachers and students with the basic resources they need, such as textbooks and copy paper?
I'll chime in on that. One thing a little different we're doing is something called Celebrate My Drive. With that, State Farm has committed $10 million to public schools across the nation, and the top 50 schools will receive a grant. Now, with that grant, 25% of that has to be used towards safe driving, but the other 75% can be used any way the schools see fit. So that money can be used towards textbooks, it can be used towards whatever it's completely up to the school. We've had a couple schools close to here ranking pretty high in the nation. Aiden Grifton is at 92, and so they're moving fast. And D.H. Conley, we need to do some work with them. They're actually at 647, but First Flight School in Kill Devil Hills, they're at 89. And so I think they have a really good shot at being within the top 50. So far, we've had over 6.3 million kids and parents commit to safe driving to help provide grants to these schools. And so that's one way where we're really working hard to partner with our public schools to try to get money there to help with those items.
Great.
Just quickly, you mentioned textbooks. I think that's one of the biggest transitions we're seeing in education now. You know, the internet has changed the world quicker than anything else it ever has. And what we're seeing now is the textbook's not quite as important as it used to be. You know, textbook used to be the crutch for what we taught. And now we're teaching, it's Common Core, and some people like it, some people don't. I think if we give it a shot, I think Common Core is going to do good things for us. But a lot of what we need, we can get off the internet. We have smart boards. Every kid's walk around with an iPod or some sort of cell phone in our schools, and we're letting kids use those in our high schools. So we have those abilities where we don't necessarily need a textbook for every subject. We're looking at sometimes math and some other classes may need a little bit of hands-on type of things, but the other classes, not as much. I think we're seeing that transition. I know that's tough for parents. It's the first thing I do is my daughter, get your book out. She goes, Dad, you didn't buy me one. Okay, so I'm in trouble. But that is a change. That's a big transition. And I know parents, I've heard that for years. Where's the new textbooks? That's something that we're going to have to see is going to change. And we're not going to have textbooks like we have. We may have them on an iPad in another couple of years, or Google Chromebooks that we have in all of our schools now.
All right. How will this event benefit special needs students?
I think it's just like every other kid. It's going to benefit the whole community. It's going to benefit all the schools. It's going to benefit all the kids.
Okay. And this is the final question. What can I do every day, and they underlined every day, to make a difference in my child's school?
I think one of the things I would say is stay involved, stay engaged. I think for the younger children, I know as a school board member, and I think our fellow board members that are here tonight have heard me say this more than once, when I make decisions, I try to make it through the lens of what it does, or my decisions, how they affect the kindergarten student, the smallest of our students. Reading with your children. I have my sons in 2nd grade, and one of the things that I do every night, my wife and I we're both in education, first thing we do at night before we sit down for dinner, or more likely going out to dinner, is figuring out what my son learned at school that day. Having the conversation. What did you do in school today? What did you like today? What was your favorite part of the day? Those are conversations that are priceless for your children at an early age, because it sends that message that school is important and that you're going to be checking and that you're going to follow up. Reading with your children. Every educational piece of research shows that in order for math to take hold, in order for science to take hold, a child must understand how to read and how to write fluently. And that's very, very important, that you read with your children and your children understand the value of literacy and being able to perform. And so I think that piece of nurturing your children at home and staying involved is critical, and that your children see the value of education through their parents' lenses.
I absolutely agree with that. My daughter, like I said, she's in the 1st grade, she's 6, and since the day she was born, we've never missed one night of not reading to her, since the day she was born. Mm. And now she loves to go to Barnes and Nobles. My 6-year-old, we're out, and she asked, Daddy, can we go to Barnes and Nobles? Because she wants to read a book. And personally, when I was a kid, I really didn't like reading, to be honest. But fortunately, just forcing myself to read to her, either myself or my wife, every single night, has engaged me as well in just loving to read, even if it's Dr. Seuss. And so, but not only that, but I think it's just really important that we as parents, we form a partnership along with the teachers, so that the teachers know that, we're not fighting against them. We don't always believe our child is never at fault. I've heard so many times the complaints some parents have is the parents feel like their child can do no wrong. And I'm a firm believer in with my daughter, hey, that's not the attitude we take here. I know teachers, they're not there for the salary, as we talked about earlier. They're there because they care. And if they care enough to educate my child, I'm going to care enough to be a partner with them to make sure that we provide the best possible education for my child as possible.
That word partnership is key.
Right.
That positive relationship. As a parent, you're talking good things, positive things about school, about education. Then your kids like school, like education. That'll just goes a long way.
That's right. Well, thank you, panel, each and every one of you, for everything that you have done, what you currently do, and what you will do for education in North Carolina, your state. Thank you very much. Let's give them a hand, please. And thank you, audience, for being such a great audience. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Baxter.
Thank you. Good evening. I just want to quickly thank everybody who has made this evening possible. I'd like to thank our panel again, Ann Foster, and the other folks from the Parents for Public Schools National Organization. The Parents for Public Schools Pitt County Board has really worked hard to make this possible. All of our sponsors this evening, the United Way, and the Chamber of Commerce have really been an integral part in this. And most of all, I want to thank all of you who chose to spend your evening with us. And I hope that you found this a useful use of your evening. I hope that you found good information and a renewed interest in the public school system. And I hope that you will take this opportunity, if you have not already, to join Parents for Public Schools of Pitt County. I am thrilled to be their executive director. This is an issue that is important to me. I have 3 children in the public schools here, and I really hope that you all will join us in our work as we begin what we hope will be a long working relationship with the school system and with the parents to make our schools the best that they can be. If you have not joined us, you can sign up this evening at our booth. If you did not do that, I encourage you to visit our website, which is PPS-Pittcounty.org. And if you have any questions or would like to be involved, don't hesitate to contact us. We welcome you, and we hope that you'll invite a friend. So I want to thank you all for coming, and we hope that you have had a good evening. Thank you very much.
Watched you from out there years and years and years. I always thought how sharp you were. Good to sit next to you.
Oh, no. You guys are the ones that help make it happen for us.
More cheering.
Good to see you.
You have a high school principal and a board chair. You must have tons of time.
I said he doesn't care about
I'm worn out all the time.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you so much for Baxter.
One thing that wasn't
Thank you so much.
talk about economic development. Every county out there, particularly the guy says who's ever the economic development guy or Chamber of Commerce. The first question we get asked is how the public schools.